Good morning. It's Tuesday, February 11th. Senate Agriculture are running a bit behind. We had a longer floor session. We have a room full today. We're going to talk about Working Lands Program and have an overview of that. We are, as customary, would like to do at the start of the week is introduce the senators. We have one senator who might make it and might not, but he's a super senior today, and that's Senator Brian Collmore. But I'll start down here.
And I'm Senator Rob Plunkett, Bennington District.
Senator Steve Heffernan, Addison County District.
Senator Joe Major, Windsor District.
We have over here
Linda Lehman, Committee Assistant.
Senator Russ Ingalls on the Essex District, and welcome. Good to see everybody this morning. Who'd like to lead off the discussion?
Morning, Senator. Deputy Secretary Allison Eastman, virtual, and I'd like to start us off if we can, and thank both you, Mr. Chair, and the committee for allowing us the time. And just to give you a little overview, we plan on having 6 speakers. We'll pass it from one to the other. And we hope to have 15 minutes at the end for questions and answers, if that will work for your committee. Does that seem like a good plan?
That sounds like a good plan, Deputy Secretary, and we will hold our questions off unless something's really burning so you can get through your presentation.
Thank you. Excellent. So I'll start us off. I'm Allison Eastman, the Deputy Secretary at the Agency of Ag. And just for a little history, Working Lands was created in 2012 by the Vermont Legislature and Governor Shumlin. The Working Lands Enterprise Fund was created and was tasked with investing in Vermont's working lands enterprises to strengthen our economy, advance our job creation, sustain our environment, and the most important, to keep Vermont beautiful. With a dwindling working landscape, legislators in 2012 had the foresight to understand why a program like Working Lands Enterprise Fund was needed and created, and why the program needed to be founded on the principles of widespread participation and responsiveness to ever-evolving contexts. In 2015, the Agency of Agriculture proposed a restructure of the Vermont Agriculture Forestry Policy Development Board and to merge it with the Working Lands Enterprise Board to become one. The legislature worked through that session to merge the 2 boards with membership to ensure forestry and agriculture were represented in a manner that would support both industries. I've served on this board for my almost 8 years at the agency, and I have to say, it's a very thorough, well stood up board, and certainly was well thought out. So the Secretary of Ag chairs the board. We also have representation from the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation, Danny Fitzko, and then Secretary of Commerce represented was Tate Brooks, our Deputy Secretary, and Elizabeth Nance is with us today and has been sitting in for Tate. We have 4 representatives of the forest sector, 4 representatives of the ag sector. We have a maple representative. We have cross-sector individuals, non-voting members, which I see as the very important when we have turnover in members, our ex officios, which are the Vermont Economic Development Authority, the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, and the Executive Director of Vermont Housing Conservation Board. They really are the 3-legged stools and give us that historical makeup when we have turnover. So we're very grateful to have those ex officio members. And most importantly, I'm going to kick it over to our Vice Chair, Alicia Utter, who is a citizen member of the board and obviously takes a lot of time to be the Vice Chair. So I'm going to kick it over to Alicia to set us off on our next part.
Thank you so much, Deputy Eastman, and thank you, Senators, for your time today. As was mentioned, I'm an active farmer. I own Arbor Farmstead in Grand Isle and also a retail market, Arbor Farm Market in South Hero, Vermont. So I want to begin today with an overview of the program impact since its inception in 2012.
Alicia, can I just have you, just for the record, just say who your name is for the people that might be listening?
Absolutely. My name is Alicia Utter, and again, I'm based in Grand Isle County.
Thank you.
Terrific. So we have been very impactful and successful in advancing the mission that was laid out in the initial statute. So the program was made to save Vermont's working landscape and maintain food and forest system viability. So since 2012, 555 projects have been funded, which reflects $18.8 million in grants and contracts. And this is both to Working Lands businesses and then service provider organizations whom support them. There was $30.9 million in matching funds leveraged. This is no longer needed. We've been really adaptive and responsive to grantees' needs, so this is no longer required. We also have impacted all 14 counties with 24,985 acres impacted. This looks like $92 million generated in sales by our grantee businesses. Lastly, I'll note that this is 540 new jobs created through our grantees. Next slide, please. So here's a snapshot overview of the 14 counties and how they've been impacted by Working Lands dollars. As you'll see, there's been a lot invested in Addison and Caledonia counties directly applied to the working landscape. Next slide, please. So there was questions initially in terms of whether farmers and foresters would take the time to pursue these grant funds. And as you can see, demand far exceeds availability. We sit through these rigorous review processes, looking at so many compelling projects that we simply don't have the funds for. In 2024, you'll see that there's over $16 million requested, and we had just over $3 million to allocate. So there is this disparity, and we could do good work with more funds. As I mentioned before, we're continuously adapting to grantee feedback and modifying our program as needed in terms of the application process, but we continue to see demand grow. There's high interest and demand. The last note I'll say before Elizabeth provides the program framework is that we all know that farming and forestry are inherently challenging. In this moment, we're facing unprecedented challenges from climate change to global economics. And I believe that we're at a critical inflection point for the Vermont working lands. My conversations with fellow land stewards and then my experiences in my own farm illuminate these challenges firsthand, especially the financial ones that might inhibit putting projects into place that would help with sustainability, viability, and innovation. So I want to underscore that these WELIB funds are essential for the future of Vermont working lands. With that, I'll hand it over to Elizabeth.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Elizabeth Sipple, Program Manager for the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, which is housed within the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets within the Agricultural Development Division. And as Alicia just teed up, I'm going to be sharing some of the design elements or the framework of the program that we believe allows it to remain responsive and impactful within the ever-evolving context of forestry and agriculture in the state. And I think as Allison actually started to outline, when Act 142 was passed 12 years ago, within the creation of the Working Lands Enterprise Initiative, the Working Lands Enterprise Board was tasked with administering the program. And the board is made up of 20 diverse experts working throughout the food, farm, and forestry systems. These are the seats. So each seat in the board from the creation of the program has an expertise associated with it. And that's just to make sure that the full breadth of expertise that should be informing our funding decisions are captured within the board. There are staff from the Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets, Forest, Parks and Recreation, and the Agency of Commerce and Community Development that serve on the board. And then, as Allison said, we also have those 3 ex officio seats, which is the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund, the Vermont Housing Conservation Board, and the Vermont Economic Development Authority. And their role is to provide direction and expertise specifically based on what they are hearing and seeing from the businesses and institutions that they're working with day in, day out. So it is the expertise of the board that directs funding decisions and makes sure that the program is responding to critical needs. Every year, during the planning process, we have an annual symposium, a several-day collective planning process. The board looks out across the entire landscape and identifies priority needs. In the past, examples of priorities identified have been investments in meat slaughter and processing, dairy, sawmills, and in investing in and strengthening the market for low-grade wood. So a second design element that allows the program to be very impactful is our participatory review process. So, and actually in FY24, so last year, with a commitment to continuous improvement, we're continuing to evolve the programmatic aspects of the program. And we piloted a brand new review process, which involved sector experts reviewing applications and discussing them in smaller cohorts. But in the face of ever increasing number of applications, and in years where we have more funding, we have even more applications. In years where there's a little less money, there are fewer applications. But in the face of a general trend in increasing application numbers, both the staff and the board remain very committed to having each application be thoroughly and thoughtfully reviewed, to respect the effort that applicants put into writing and submitting the application, but also to make sure that awarded funds are being used to the highest and best value. So a part of that commitment was piloting these smaller conversations with sector experts as reviewers. So that allows for each application to be discussed one by sector experts. This slide represents the organizations that participated in the review process last year, and we continue to recruit new reviewers each year. And every reviewer is vetted for conflict of interest. And if there is an identified conflict of interest, that reviewer is asked to, or they do not participate in voting or in the review conversations. So again, last year we piloted a system. So to give an example, in FY24 last year, in last fiscal year, in the sort of hallmark granting program, the business enhancement grant, we had 63 applicants and we had 35 reviewers, because each application is read by 3 reviewers. So an application is not read by only 1 reviewer, it's read by 3 reviewers, and 1 reviewer is specifically looking at the business financials. And that's a reviewer who has the capacity to analyze business financial documents. So instead of having a long conversation where we're trying to discuss 63 applications with 35 individuals, we broke up into cohorts and we matched. So we had a maple, a forestry, a livestock, a dairy, and a specialty foods cohort. And the sector experts were assigned to the cohort where their expertise is applicable. And then we were able to have very focused, intimate conversations and really dive into each application. So it was a successful pilot. We're doing that process again this year. And another aspect of the review process is, and I think this is a service that we offer to applicants, we offer individualized feedback to non-awarded applicants. And we do find that the smaller review conversations with the sector experts also allows us to strengthen the feedback that we're offering. And then the final program framework aspect that I want to highlight as having as allowing us to be remain and be an impactful program is our flexible funding. So we are able to businesses are able to apply for their priority need, and simultaneously, when needed, the board is able to identify targeted funds to move the needle in a critical area identified. So I think the flexible funding works both ways. We're able to respond to businesses' priority needs and some funding opportunities and have targeted funding opportunities, as well. As you can see actually just realized I skipped this, but let's pause on this. This is capturing a timeline. So this is the list of each of the funding opportunities that we offered last year. But what we really wanted to highlight today is you can see in the second to last column, the application due date. And then in the last column is the application notification date. Because within this rigorous review process, we also are committed to timely response rates to applicants. So we have found, and we are committed to responding to applicants, notifying them of award or not within a 2-month window. And that's what we have found that we need for the individual review of each application by experts, to convene the review conversations by cohort, and then to convene the board to make final decisions. So that all happens within a 2-month window. And we think it's a strength of the program, and that was one of the points I wanted to make about the review process being thorough and efficient. So I think now we can go to the next slide. So in FY24, we were able to fund 65 projects. We had over 345 applications that were reviewed. And what you are going to see in the coming presentations is the true diversity of projects that are funded. So diversity in the scope of the project, the impact, but also diversity in the stage of the business and the size of the business. And I'm not going, you're going to be really see that in the coming presentations. But in summary, some of the design aspects that allow the Working Lands program to remain impactful are the flexible funding, the expertise of the board, and the very rigorous review process. And we think this allows us to both make catalytic investments, timely investments for individual businesses, but also to make investments that are actively building the food and forestry systems that will allow all of our Working Lands businesses to thrive.
I know we're supposed to wait, or we're gonna wait for questions after, but it's just disheartening over and over and over to see the ask.
Yeah.
And then see the 5 times better than 5 times the ask versus the reward. And just over and over we see that.
Yeah, it is one of the, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Is there a gross amount that, like, if you gross in over $1 million or 3, is there a cap on where these
Award?
funds? Yeah, like say my company made $3 million, but is there any caps to say you can't be?
There isn't a cap. but need is taken into account. It's not the sole deciding factor, of course, but if a business is highly profitable and looks like they would be able to, pretty easily either finance a project through cash flow or access a loan, it's less competitive. And I think especially in years where, like, as you can just see, the demand is incredible. So we're having to make very hard decisions based on, a whole number of factors.
I'm just curious if there was, like a ceiling height. Sometimes there is that if you make gross over a certain amount, that you wouldn't be eligible for
No.
funds.
There's not a set ceiling. And in FY24, we had the impact grants, which you're going to hear more about. And I think a part of also the diversity in the awards is in FY24, we had awards beginning at 6,000, going all the way up to 250,000. And in years where we do have the larger dollar awards, the demand is, substantially more. So in FY24 versus FY25, and that in the slide that was showing demand versus funds available, demand came back down to just 5 times the demand in FY25, where it was, well, actually it was still 5 times in FY24. Yeah, actually that was stable. So, but we didn't have the large dollar awards, so that's why the total demand is smaller in FY25. We don't have the market level investment.
Yes.
And correct me if I'm wrong, if you were not awarded in this go round, you provide some type of support that how you can get awarded the next time. Is that accurate?
We provide feedback.
Okay.
And then sometimes whether, then it's up to the applicant to take that into account or not. And sometimes a part of the feedback is also offering to connect the applicant with some of the free and amazing, business advising services that this state offers, such as enrollment in the Farm and Forest Viability Program or enrollment in the Vermont Sustainable Jobs Fund coaching program. So we will make those recommendations as well if we see like that the financials are very disorganized, or, if there's no business plan, but the business is at a point where it really should be, forward thinking in the way that a business plan helps you to be.
Well, I mean, that's invaluable, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And if when they don't take it, that's on them.
Exactly. Yeah. But we do see many businesses that are not awarded, and then they come back and they are awarded.
Well, cool. Well, thank you. Good morning.
Hi, good morning. Claire Salerno, Program Coordinator for the Working Land Amortization of the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. So I'm going to go through examples of grantees from FY24 to provide the illustration of the diversity of businesses that we fund and the different types of projects and the different types of impact that they're getting at. So this slide captures a wide variety of businesses and projects funded through 2 of our grant programs, which is the Business Enhancement Grant and the Small Farm Diversification and Transition Grant. And that was a one-time grant program specifically for FY24. Seeing everything from a dairy farm diversifying into potato production to equipment to expand on-farm poultry processing to storage space for Honeycrisp apples. Next slide. And this slide captures the grantee business stage across all of our business grants in FY24. So as you can see, we support businesses at quite a few different stages of development. A little over half are in their growth maturity phase, but we did support 42% of our business grantees were in the earlier startup stage of their business. And then 5% were for businesses that are in the revitalization stage. So this grant program will generally tends to focus on the growth stage of businesses. We do, there are no restrictions on who can apply, and there are early stage and startup businesses that do receive funds.
Yes. So Claire, sorry to interrupt. Can you just give me a quick example of the revitalization, like a,
Yeah, so that might be, I think, for example, a dairy farm that maybe was dairy for many years and is now shifting in a new direction. For example, the dairy farm that's growing those might be shifting to
Okay.
beef or something else.
Yeah, thanks.
And often those are like the new generation maybe taking over.
Yep.
Great. So to stay responsive to the current context, we've made some changes in how grant project impacts are measured. And we ask questions about the potential project impact during the application process to inform who gets funded. And then we also follow up with grantees after the project is complete to understand what those impacts have been. And so some of the changes we made expand some of the targeted project impacts that we're looking at. And these were made based on feedback that we heard from applicants, as well as focus groups that we had with business advisors and working land stakeholders last summer. Next slide. Great. So job creation has always been a key focus of the program, and it still is important. It is something we ask about. But given the current labor context, we are also asking about project impact on labor efficiencies, workforce development, and worker owner well-being, since often creating new jobs is not necessarily feasible or makes sense for the business, but finding ways to be more efficient, to make it easier for workers to do their jobs is a huge focus of so many of the grant programs that we see. So one example is Belter Family Partnership, which received a $250,000 grant to increase efficiency by installing milking robots. And they're milking 3 times a day. And so this is going to save 105 milking hours per week. And this shift in labor is allowing the son of the farm owners to spend less time in the barn, managing the milking employees, and more time in other areas such as herd health, crops, and maintenance repair. And then also this workforce is predominantly migrant workers. And with the elimination of the need to milk cows 3 times a day, they're able to train these workers in more skilled labor, such as feeding cows, caring for the animals, and daily maintenance. So it's not eliminating jobs, it's just able to have people work in different areas of the farm where there's need. And that's helping to sustain this new generation of the farm. And then Sunday Bell Farm is also a dairy, and they're a small raw milk dairy in Danville, so other end of the spectrum. But they're installing a new milking parlor and milking equipment that can milk twice as many cows in half as much time, and reducing any need to handle milk. Before they were having to carry 275 pounds of milk a day. So this is going to be huge for them to be able to save their bodies as they're young farmers getting into this and wanting to be sustainable. Okay. So one of the key program impacts that we often have looked at is adding acres in production for farm or forestry, which is still very important. But we also wanted to focus on overall impact to land management as well as climate adaptation. So I'll provide a few examples in each of these areas. So Carbon Brook Orchard received a $15,000 grant to support their shift from a traditional dairy into apple cider production. And the grant is for transitioning the orchard that they established using conventional apple varieties to transition it to more diverse and resilient wild seedlings. So this is not only transitioning, part of their transition from dairy to an orchard, but also transitioning to like a more resilient type of apple that will help them be more resilient to climate change and also reduce pesticide costs and therefore reducing their operating costs. So we're seeing not only impacts on the land, but then impacts in the generational transfer and operating costs as well. Sweetland Farm is a produce farm in Norwich, and they received a $190,000 grant to install biomass and solar fueled winter crop production and storage capacity. So they have a pretty amazing goal to be able to offer over 75% of their produce year round and to pilot winter growing in Vermont and show what that could look like. So they are hoping to be able to deliver products November through April while also phasing out fossil fuels. and not a land management impact, but they also are looking to then create 4 to 5 more year-round full-time jobs that would be paid at $20 an hour or more. So really amazing pilot that they're hoping to be a model for other Vermont farms. And then Bear Island Maple with a project to establish maple sap collection on 10 acres of forest in Bolton. So bringing land into maple production that previously so we've also added a new impact category focused on equity, engagement, and equality. And so this is where applicants can describe how their project will reach or impact historically underserved or marginalized communities. So this could be such as people living below the poverty threshold, facing food insecurity or homelessness, immigrants, LGBTQ plus people, people of color, people with disabilities, veterans, and women. So I'll provide a few examples of farms where their project has an equity impact. So one of them is Ananda Gardens in East Montpelier, and they've used their $62,000 grant and matching funds to build a permanent farm stand on their farm. And they are one of 17 BIPOC-owned farms in Vermont. The co-owner, Melissa Oliva, is a first-generation citizen of the U.S. immigrating from El Salvador in 2016, and their family is bicultural and bilingual. So the farm stand will help them achieve their financial goals, and it will also help Melissa continue to promote the awareness of the link between farming and wellness in the BIPOC community, since she's active in the Young Farmers Coalition and the BIPOC Vermont Farm Organization Liberation Ecosystems. And Melissa and Patrick, the co-owners, both speak Spanish, so they've been able to hire Vermonters that only speak Spanish. And up to 50% of their farm team has been BIPOC and Spanish speakers. Another example is Azalene's Respite Sanctuary in Groton to begin a small micro goat dairy and install pasteurizer equipment and micro creamery facilities. And a goal of this business is to serve as an incubator hub for BIPOC and transgender people in rural Vermont. And then lastly, New Tradition Farm is in Huntington, and they've traditionally grown salad greens, and they've been diversifying with their grant into fruit and nut offering. And the goal is that by the 7th year of this planting, it will increase sales by 75%. And there's a few different equity components of this grant. The first one being that food security is a key value for New Tradition Farm, and they participate in a variety of different programs to offer reduced price or free CSA shares through the NOFA CSA share program, as well as the Willis City Food Shelf and Burlington Food Not Bombs. So this project will be able to benefit recipients of all of those programs in Chittenden County. And also New Tradition Farm is LGBTQ owned and operated, and the land that the farm has signed a 50-year lease agreement on to grow for the Fruit and Nut Project belongs to the Huntington Open Women's Land, which is a nonprofit organization that stewards 50 acres of land held in perpetuity for women, transgender, and non-binary people. Great. And so now I'm going to give a few examples of projects that have an important impact on increasing product output and increasing sales, which those have been key metrics and impacts that we've looked at over the course of the program. So the first example is Chamberlain's Farm in Underhill, which was a grant to reopen their farm store that had been active under the previous generation of ownership and had no longer been, and now that the new generation has taken over the farm, they saw demand in their community and saw a business opportunity to reopen this farm store. And they also partner with other local producers to offer additional products. And in the first heat, it was opened, I think, partway through the season last year, and they saw over $10,000 in sales from both their products, and they're also selling neighboring farm products as well. And they were also able to use the cooler as a space to store potatoes that were grown on the farm and then distributed by a local organization, the Underhill Jericho Food Hub, for free to food shelves. So there was also an equity impact in that grant as well. And Another example of increased product output and sales is Halmer's Farm, which is a dairy farm, diversifying into potato production, also spearheaded by a next generation farmer. And so this was a relatively small grant for us, 8,600 for a potato harvester. So this will allow for a large increase in production while decreasing the labor input, which will result in increased sales of 25%.
Through the process of your grading the projects as you go, how much input is equity given into that?
So we generally consider all of the impacts together. Like we're not focusing on like that it has to have all of the impacts or it has to have an equity impact. I think there is in the
Is there a
scoring.
greater concentration on that?
We did pilot doing a greater concentration on equity. But there's, again, it's not that we don't ever expect that any project will score highly in every single area.
It's 5 points out of 100
Yeah.
point system. So I wouldn't say we were looking at so many different, because the scoring criteria looks at business viability, it looks at the financial documents, it looks at the work plan, it looks at the budget provided, and then it looks at the impacts. So that's just one. And then the impacts, as Claire just presented, are diverse within themselves. We're looking at the land management, acres and, increased acreage and production, increased sales, increased productivity, and equity is one of the.
So the public can say that that's just one criteria that's there, but the applicants, that isn't going to push somebody out because they don't have an equity
Exactly.
portion of it.
Yeah, we certainly fund projects where that's not a component and that's okay. But previously there wasn't actually any. involved. Yeah. That's all I have for you on
Well,
examples.
thank you very much.
Thank you.
Commissioner, how are you?
Great,
Good. Glad to have you here.
good to be here. For the record, my name's Danielle Fitzko. I'm the Commissioner of Forest Parks and Recreation. And I'm here to sort of shine a light on the real importance of Working Land Enterprise Initiative grants to the forestry sector. I just also, before I get into that, I'm just listening to Agency of Agriculture, Food and Markets present, and I just want to tell you how amazing they are at really administering a really thoughtful and impactful grant program. Not only how they strategically invest, but the wraparound services with the service providers and everything they provide is truly making an impact. I just want to give them some credit for their good work. I want to talk to you about the forestry sector and the supply chain market level grants that WeLend provides. I think Vermont's heavily forested. Over 76% of the state is forested. Economically, impact to the state, $1.3 billion annually contributes to our economy with over 9,000 jobs, and that's direct impact. We look at sort of the multiplier effect, it's $1.2 billion and over 13,000 jobs, so it's critically important. When we look at the investments that the Working Land Enterprise Initiatives provides, the scale to the forestry sector is really important. It's expensive. If you're in the woods or if you're on the manufacturing floor, equipment is really expensive.
Yeah.
Originally, when the grants first started, the maximum grant amount was around $20,000, and we just weren't seeing forestry sector apply because of the cost of really doing business in the forestry sector. Recently, we've had a lot of extra sort of dollars come in. We've had one-time ARPA dollars and some one-time state funds that have come in that has really allowed the grant program to scale up. And they had grants that were up to $250,000. And that's where we start to see that supply chain impact on the forest economy, which has been just instrumental. So big, bold investments are big, bold impacts on the ground. Last March, the FPR produced a 10-year action plan for the forest economy. It's called the Vermont Forest Future Strategic Roadmap. It was asked for by the General Assembly because they recognized the challenges in the forest product sector, everything from changing landowner attitudes, the price increasing, and just market demand. And so we now have a 10-year plan for the forest product sector. And one of the key strategies is that we need direct investments to forest product businesses. If I look at the landscape of available grants, this is the one. This is the one that makes the most impact. It's local. They have the wraparound support that's needed. So I just can't tell you enough how important these grants are, particularly how they really spur innovation, but also keep the legacy that we have that we want to maintain for the future. If I think about the impact it has on our communities, our families, and then where we're going, climate smart products would.
Well, I'm glad to see Goodrich Lumber on this list. I know they were modeling as far as to get VEC to work with them as far as bring this power line in. It was about a mile, but that they had to do. And I know we had some conversations about that. So to see them be able to get off the diesel and onto the free phase power, I hope the VEC did their part as well. Because again, you know, they were looking at better than that, $500,000 to switch from doing that. So glad to see they're on the list.
And that was a big investment, and it's not only for the business, but also for carbon footprint energy transformation.
Right.
I'm going to give you sort of 3 examples of how they've been making an impact on the ground in the forestry sector.
And we have some of these people coming in tomorrow that actually were the recipients of the
Fantastic.
Working Lands Enterprise.
They'll probably do a much better job.
No, we like to
Color
hear,
on the
we like to
story.
hear the success stories.
I'm going to take you to Craftsbury, Vermont. There's a company called 802 Logging. They received a $50,000 grant to purchase a fellow buncher, which is a heavy piece of equipment that's in the woods, that cuts and then also stacks, so then it can get moved out. It really improves productivity and safety. I will quote the recipient. I can adjust my schedule to accommodate the weather and the changing season. I can cut small amounts of wood at a time and process faster, so it's not getting covered in snow or frozen to the ground. 802 Logging has increased productivity by 20% and is on track to increase their sales by 25%. So that's incredible for a logging company in Craftsbury. Now we'll go to Fletcher, Vermont, and we'll talk about Laughingstock Farms Forest Products. That is a sawmill. They received one of those catalyst grants, $150,000 to expand their sawmill operation. Not only for like expanding capacity, but worker safety. So it's a really big investment for them. They are now able to double their capacity of production, producing 4,000 board feet a day. And I had some staff this morning who were like crunching the numbers of what that actually means. I was trying to put it into perspective. That's over, if you're thinking about how you frame a house and the wood that's needed, that's at least a house a week that this sawmill is now producing. They are now taking more wood from local loggers, and they're able to meet the current demand. And they have a goal of increasing their sales by 60%. My last example is to show that while these big investments, these big bold investments that are so needed, the small amount does matter too. And there's a business in Williston called SS Forestry Solutions that received a $15,000 grant to rehab a logging forwarder. So basically, once the wood is stacked in the woods, you got to get it to the landing. So that's what the forwarder does. And this $15,000 allowed them to make those necessary improvements and allowing them to really diversify their operations. They just started with saw logs, and now they're doing chips for wood energy. So it's going either to local schools for thermal energy or for electric energy. And they're also now have a robust firewood operation and are doing about 200 cords of wood a year. They have a total output of 150 million board feet of saw logs a year. And we crunched the numbers on that, and that's about 10,000 single family homes a year. So we're thinking about like affordable housing or need homes, we can produce the wood right here in Vermont. And if we make investments in our manufacturing ability from in the woods to the production, it really does make an impact. So that's your spotlight on forestry.
Thank you very
Yep.
much, Commissioner.
Thanks, Dan.
Always good to see you.
Good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
Good. Elizabeth Nance, I'm the grant programs manager with the Agency of Commerce and Community Development. Not trying to build, Deputy Secretary Brooks' shoes on this board, but, so we sort of take obviously the economic and community development lens. The one thing that Commissioner Fitzko had mentioned that I think is important is dealing with the number of grants, and most grants are if you're for profit, you're not eligible. So I think this program really being able to directly impact for profit businesses is unique and invaluable. So I just wanted to throw that out before I forgot. So you may have, I love data, so I was going to sort of share some data that's related to the working lands. We all know that Vermont produces more than 50% of the maple US. What I did not know is the state's 0.37 gallons per tap is higher than the national average is 0.342. That was just sort of the impact of our maple industry and how we can support them through this program. There were 4,032 new and beginning producers in 2022. So I think that's up from 3,700 in 2017, which was the last data. So I think it's important, and this was illustrated, I think it was 43% are new and emerging businesses that they feel some level of support, and it's so that they can reach that maturity. In 2023, 323 farms engaged in agritourism, and I think that's only going up as farms look to diversify. Some of that's related to climate resiliency. In 2023, the direct to consumer sales were 42 million. So, direct to consumer sales. So that's a huge number. And I think that ends up keeping, you don't have to deal with distributors and third parties. That keeps more money on the farm. I believe for the first time in 2023, sales of farm products exceeded $1 billion. That was up 32% since 2017. So I certainly think we think a lot about manufacturing or healthcare sectors. I think it's important not to get lost just how absolutely vital this industry is. The other thing in sort of doing some research, it's important to also remember that these funds can leverage other funds. The Vermont Farmers Foods, the Agency of Ag, Food and Markets received a Northern Border Regional Commission Award a few years ago, and they in turn were able to help the Center for Agriculture and Enterprise and Vermont Farmers Market Education Center to increase the amount of impact that they will have. They can also the historic preservation brownfield, which we know is a huge issue in the state's capital investment program for 3 years. So they're not necessarily standalone. They can be a small piece of a larger. So a couple of examples of the FY24 grants. I will be honest, I was not one of the reviewers. So I'm going off this great information. The Vermont Farmers Food Center in Rutland received $50,000 to pursue implementation of its part of Vermont Agriculture Business Plan that will result in produce packing center commercial kitchen. And I just read, but I think the story is from November that those are moving forward. So that's exciting. They expect to add 2 full-time equivalents and 2 part-time employees with a 20% increase in local food sales to socially disadvantaged farmers and a 20% increase for local food producers, and then double their number of partner organizations serving marginalized and underserved communities. So that sort of comes back to the equity piece from before. But I think when you help one group of people, you're helping everybody. And then the second one is Thornhill Farms new Champlain Valley Grain Center, which received $150,000 to provide key elements needed to establish a thriving grain industry in Vermont. And those grains include corn, rye, barley, wheat, and then apple, which apple's a grain. This project will have a supply chain ripple effect supporting farms and families with strong marketing and pricing, help to keep the landscape working and encourage soil and food health using organic agronomy practices. They expect 300 plus acres planted in grain in the first year. And then they're working with farmers who have started to grow or want to grow grain. And lastly, sorry.
Where's that one located?
That one, Thornhill, yeah, the Thornhill Farms was in Greensboro, but the center is in Ferrisburg.
Is any, maybe we don't know, but I apologize. I can't think if I can remember this. Because we're starting to hear more and more about the farmers growing the grains and all that. Is any of that going to the food production as far as for human consumption? Or is that going more for, so it is making making the food markets?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And the last thing is just, in FY25, Wheeline was appropriated the $1 million base, with no special appropriations to some of those larger dollar awards. That particularly for forestry, because I think we're looking to how many awards can have the most impact. We don't want to necessarily do 4 large awards, but yeah, I think we sort of spread that money where it makes sense. So that's my presentation.
Thank you very much.
So all of the Champlain Valley Grain Center is going to be for distillation or consumption, human consumption.
Yep.
They're focused.
Distillation, meaning going into.
They're gonna make a whiskey. I believe.
Okay, yeah. Anything, or I'd like to get grounded for, the baking and.
Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
the other.
That's
piece
the
of-
other, yeah.
Okay.
And they're actually gonna have a whole pizza setup on site.
Yeah.
It'll also feature, like, have it be a community center as well.
Linda, do we have anybody coming in on talking about that as far as any of the
Grain,
grain? Oh,
nothing.
okay, maybe we'll talk about that.
We could
Okay.
certainly organize that.
Okay.
That's of interest.
Yeah, I think that's, if we can work with Linda on that, I think that we might want to have a piece of that coming in and, mainly, to be fair, is because it's a growing market and I think we're hearing that, the facilities that they have are running into storage problems and all that stuff. So if we could shed a little bit of light on that, I think that this committee would be interested in hearing that.
So is that right on Route 7 at the
intersection.
Is it? Yeah,
the intersection?
I think it's right on the corner there. 132. I'm not familiar.
Yeah, I'm not, that's been my district, so I'm kind of curious of what the actual address is for.
Because it's just being,
It hasn't been,
like, they're in the process
Yeah.
of building it now.
they have all the permits.
You don't know? Thank
Yeah.
Well, welcome, Miss Abby Willard. How are you?
I'm good.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
For the record, Abby Willard, Agency of Agriculture, Ag Development Division Director. I
Good to be
think,
back.
thank you. Yeah, I think my job is to sort of wrap us up. So there's a lot of history to the Working Lands program. There's a lot of enthusiasm around this program having been in existence for 11 years of investment, 11 plus years of investment. And it's complex. So I think you've heard all the different aspects of how the program is run and how applications are reviewed. And then like the array of businesses that are supported by Working Lands businesses that are supported by the resources. One of the critical kind of wraparound benefits that Commissioner Fitzko referenced was the Working Lands board and funds make investments in service provision as well.
which are designed to help working lands businesses make the adaptation that they need to new markets and products, do a pivot if they need to adjust and expand and grow. And so we wanted to share a few of the service provider awards that were made in fiscal year 24 and as an example of those investments. So there was 14 different service provider or producer association group grants that were made in fiscal year 24. And each of them sort of alongside the direct investment in the working land businesses help grow those businesses, both invest in the working lands business as well as the viability of the working landscape in our food and forest systems. So the first example that I wanted to touch on was a program that exists at the Vermont Community Loan Fund called the Sprout Loan Program. And that's been an effort that's actually been supported by the Working Lands Program for many years running. And it's a different type of investment. So this is to support a loan program, whereas the Working Lands grants to businesses are grants, not loans. But the Sprout program makes investments in early stage and startup businesses. So entrepreneurs that are looking to do something new and exciting and based on a variety of reasons have not been able to be competitive with a traditional lender. And so this is an opportunity that the Sprout program has provided to over 52 businesses to provide loans since 2016, and over 18 of those funded in recent years. So for example, in the $150,000 that was provided through the Working Lands Program, it's able to draw down loan payments from 6% to 1% for those businesses that are looking to kind of make an investment. And the success of the program is pretty outstanding. They're able to demonstrate that more than half of the businesses to date that have received a Sprout Loan Program support have actually effectively, successfully launched businesses. So it's nice. I think they just said half of the beneficiaries. So yeah, 50% out of the 52 loans that have been provided through the program. And I think a nice expansion of the portfolio of investment that the Working Lands funds go towards. The Working Lands Board made a priority list of the type of service provision investments that they wanted to make back in fiscal year 23. And they were looking specifically at building executive business skills in businesses. So that was a lot of the feedback that came back around business planning, is that businesses lacked some kind of critical skill set. Focusing on marketing and market development, and then thinking about workforce development as well as succession planning. As we know, businesses are, facing this aging operator, and like, what's the plan for kind of transition of the business? So one of the other investments that was made in fiscal year 24, and actually in previous years as well, was to Paul Franklin Collins, which is a Burlington-based firm that has over 50 years of service experience in Vermont. And the goal was to provide education and awareness to participating working lands businesses around employment law and other support structure that could help businesses be better employers. They engaged 20 different businesses in a 6-session training experience where they were focused on workforce development and executive business skills. Specifically looking at and understanding employment law compliance, looking at managerial skills that enhance and retain employees. So specifically, they worked with these businesses to either develop or revise an employee handbook if they didn't already have one. Provide support around job descriptions and postings of whatever requirements are necessary in a business, looking at the management structure that might exist within that ag and or forestry business, specifically looking at record keeping methods as well as employee evaluation processes. So a lot of those executive business skills that are not really the super sexy activities to highlight within a business, but really critical for a business to be successful. And so the funds to Paul Franklin Collins have been over multiple years, and over 38 different businesses have participated both on the ag and food side and on the forestry side. So the next example is looking at kind of marketing and branding. So in fiscal year 24, Rival Brands was received funding to support businesses to do a 10-week workshop series with 20 different farm, food, and forestry businesses looking specifically at how they can enhance their marketing and branding. So if you're not aware of Rival Brands, they have worked with a lot of Vermont businesses like Blake Hill Preserves, Iapetus, Cider Wine, Vermont Smoking Cure, Oak Knoll Dairy, which is a goat dairy. So they have a nice reputation of both working with Vermont-based businesses to help broaden their brand and also focus on the marketing strategies. So it's been exciting to be able to like make an investment on service provision to support businesses in that way. And many businesses know and value marketing and branding, and it's just tough to make that a priority. And so having the access to this type of a marketing firm for those businesses makes it all the more possible.
Absolutely.
The last piece that I wanted to share was, this is actually a service provider investment made to a producer association. So that's a separate funding opportunity that exists within the Working Lands program. And there were three different producer association grants awarded in fiscal year 24. One went to the Vegetable and Berry Growers Association. And I really love this project because it's an example of something that we would have assumed already existed in Vermont, but didn't, which was a directory for pick your own operations.
Yeah.
So I think we know that pick your own is one of the greatest ways to sort of bring customers onto the farm. It's a wonderful agritourism opportunity. And yet it requires both the development and maintenance of a website to make that information accessible and available. And so through a grant, through Working Land, the Producer Association matched at 100%, they were able to create this pick your own site and functionality where over 42 different farms have gone in and created a profile. And as a result, you as a customer can go through and sort by product type that you want to go pick, if it's strawberries or blueberries or pumpkins or apples. And then you could do it by location. So if you wanted to go just in a town or within a county, or you want to know the distance between this pick your own and that pick your own to kind of plan an activity for visitors to your family into the state of Vermont. And you can do it as a list, you can have it as a map, kind of like all the different kind of data visualizations that you want to capture that information. Since September, so we haven't collected data or looked at the metrics since kind of the end of the growing season, but over 7 states have accessed the site, over 1,000 different unique users. So that's really exciting to know that there's that many different individuals and states represented and kind of trying to access pick your own opportunities in Vermont, and a great expansion to the veggie berry growers functionality. So I think Elizabeth spoke a good bit earlier about all the different ways, per your question, Chair Ingalls, about how we provide support to grantees throughout the process, from when a funding opportunity is open through to when they receive feedback as either a denied application or a funded award. But I think it's worth noting that that's all thanks and due to a great network of service providers across Vermont, and to a great staff that are really dedicated year-round to supporting the Working Lands businesses. So that could look like, when a funding opportunity is open, fielding phone calls of 20 to 30 calls a week when businesses are calling and wanting to talk about their project or ask questions about eligibility or have specific kind of ideas that they want to run by our program team. From that population, we've even directed a subset of applicants to get some light touch assistance from the Farm and Forest Viability Program, just to ensure that they're getting that little bit of support that they need to help make their application that much more kind of appropriately tailored to the funding opportunity. So I think in fiscal year 24 and 25, we sent about 20 different Working Lands businesses to that program to seek support. When in in fiscal year 24, when the program has larger supply chain impact awards to grant, which are like these bigger, more complicated, have to benefit multiple businesses within the food or forest system. They've actually been able to access grant writing assistance through a program at Vermont Housing and Conservation Board called READY, which supports certain scale businesses to either write for federal funding or for these larger state grants. So again, like an even, further ticked up amount of technical assistance to those businesses. And then, as I think Elizabeth noted, every time an applicant applies for an award, they have access to and can receive feedback on their application. That feedback could be like areas that we recommend for them to strengthen their project or their proposal. Sometimes it means we recommend that they get additional technical assistance and work with a business coach and planner through either farm viability or through the work at Farms Plate. And then other times we're actually connecting them to other resources, other grant programs that are a better fit for the project that they're looking for. And knowing that, you know, in fiscal year 24, where we had over 345 applications and we funded 65 projects, we turned away 280 applications that some of them could have actually been shovel ready, you know, high quality applications that we just didn't have the resources to support. And so connecting them to other grant funds, I think, can create an opportunity for maybe that project to still happen on the timeline and scale that was intended. So all of those touch points are really important and rely upon that network of professionals that are really helping businesses navigate to success. So really grateful for both our staff and for the partners that make all that kind of those connections happen for businesses. And there's more we can do.
So I heard about a project today. I didn't even know
Yeah.
about. It was in New Hampshire, actually. I wish it was in Vermont, but it was in Berlin, New Hampshire. They have 8 acres of greenhouse. I don't know if it's one big, but they're growing 7 to 8 different types of lettuce. They have a solar component of it to help heat the greenhouses and all of that. And they're shipping 30 to 40,000 heads of lettuce a day. Had we ever heard, did they try to come to Vermont or anything like that? Have we ever heard anything about that or anything like that? Or do we have anybody knocking on our doors, asking questions about that? That's just amazing because when you just think that, oh, well, we can't grow that type of product here, or we can't, you know, that's 365 days a year. They're doing this and they're supplying a product that typically does not come from Vermont, except, you know, maybe in the summertime. That's just an amazing amount of lettuce to be growing in a small rural town of New Hampshire.
I mean, we certainly have year-round production that happens in Vermont, and I don't know if it's at a similar scale, but at least at a similar design where it's going to be either hydroponic or indoor grown to be able to provide greens and tomatoes and other, you know, culinary herbs year-round. And that's new in the last
And
10, 15
that's
years.
what the Sweetland Farm project is aiming to do. I don't know how much their focus is on greens compared with other vegetables. But they're the farm in Norwich that I mentioned, that they're, I think, looking to be doing year-round growing at a scale that we haven't seen in Vermont yet. And so we did support that project.
And fossil fuel free, which is
Yeah,
also
so I think
a unique part of their project and model.
This is what I love is both Elizabeth and Claire have such both retention of details of the awardees and the applications that they receive, but also just knowledge of like what's happening on the ground. And I'm so grateful that we have that level of like detailed knowledge within the agency, within this program, because I don't keep track and don't have the memory retention for it, but I'm so grateful that they did.
I want to second your commendation. To be able to go out to these farmers and advise them on business and technology, and because that landscape is constantly changing. And I'm going to defer to, you know, my farmers here, but I would suspect that it is happening, and for this agency to continue to do that, that's tremendous. And so I wish we could, you know, do it to all of the farmers that apply and want that, you know. So I guess it's incumbent upon us to try to find some money for it. Good luck, though.
Thank you.
Reality.
Well, good.
Yeah.
What else do you have?
I mean, I think that's the kind of update. You have the impact report, which is always a really valuable resource to sort of show what the impact is of a particular year's investments. Yeah, I think there's a lot of pride in this program and real appreciation for both how it's built, the expertise that exists within the review process and the reviewers and the staff, the commitment to be nimble and responsive to industry need and changes. And then this ability to kind of invest across businesses in a variety of ways, either at different stages of development, in different ways through a grant versus a loan, and then provide those wraparound services to support. So hopefully the program has a long and bright future. And yeah, I think we're open to both hearing questions that you have, and then really excited to be able to bring grantees in.
Yeah.
In previous years, we've kind of coupled kind of the program structure and then the grantee highlights, and it has felt a little too much. And I think the success stories that grantees share are a little bit lost by being kind of accompanying the whole kind of administrative part of the program. But hearing from the businesses is actually the most exciting part for us. And I hope as well for you to just hear their story, what motivates them. They're taking time out of their kind of day-to-day operation to write grants and then choose to come in and talk about it once they've been successful at receiving an award. They have so much to teach us and show us. So hope you enjoy.
Well, at 10:45 tomorrow, we have Elizabeth coming back in to talk about some of those successes. So
Yeah, I'll
that's- we
see
look
you then.
forward
I'm
to that.
excited about that.
Yeah.
So we'll have 3 grantees coming in tomorrow. Well, 1 by Zoom, 3 grantees speaking. But I also think, you identified an interest in the grain, like the growing grain industry in Vermont.
Mm.
And I think, we have a grantee that's, incredibly committed to that, to the growth of the Vermont's grain economy. And if you review the list of grantees, the market level or the business enhancement small farm level, and there's a project that really catches your interest and you want to hear more about. Overall, grantees are very excited actually to come and share what they're doing because it's exciting and interesting, and they want to share the impacts. They want to share the impact of the grant funds to support the program as well. So feel free to, ask us to come back around specific projects.
Well, I think
or-
we're gonna have that. I'd like to have a larger segment of that, maybe have a half hour, 45 minutes of maybe some of the folks that are doing that have transitioned out of dairy maybe into,
Okay.
and how and when that's done. But we'll work with, you guys can work with Linda to
Yeah.
have them come in, but I think we'd be interested in hearing about that.
Oh, on that note, I'll note that, Abby mentioned the Sprout Loan Program, which is the subsidized loan program. One of the loan recipients of that is New American Stone Mills, which is based in Morrisville, and they build the grain mills that
Yeah.
we're seeing a lot of farms, install. So even though we didn't directly fund that, the program's been involved with that as well.
Well, nice. Well, very happy to have everyone in, and we appreciate all of you, appreciate what you do, and great presentation. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having us.
Stay warm.
Thanks.
The committee, 11:30, we have the next, one. So we'll just take a few minutes break. Senator Major is not gonna make it on the, he's gonna leave 11:30, but he's, good news, he's on VPR or Black History Month. So that'll be kind of